right, welcome in to the Big Hitters Only podcast, week 2. It's Monday. I'm recording now with Rodd Baxley. Hello, Rodd.
Hello, guys. Hello, Ross.
I texted Rodd. It's 4:20 on Monday, September 2nd, laboring on Labor Day. Quick intro before we bring you a long-form interview with Eastern Michigan Athletic Director Scott Wetherbee. I interviewed him in July, and I'm trying to remember what we talked about, but great dude. I worked at Eastern Michigan last year when I was in Ann Arbor, so it's pretty cool talking to obviously a Division I athletic director in the MAC conference in Ypsilanti, Michigan, right next door to Ann Arbor. Scott was great. We talked for about almost an hour, maybe 45 minutes to an hour, about all things from NCAA to competing at a MAC level school, to building a football program, to fundraising, to leadership, to hiring and firing coaches. It's a pretty in-depth interview. It was my first interview, and talking to an AD, we were right next to each other. I was working on the technology. It was kind of awkward. There's times when we were so close to each other. So bear with me, but I'm gonna do a lot of these kind of different kinds of long-form interviews with people who have interesting and cool jobs. Hey, and to talk to an athletic director on the Division I level, I couldn't turn down an opportunity. Really want to thank Scott. So stay after the brief UNC talk with Rodd. This will be about 15, 20 minutes long, and we'll jump right into the podcast interview with Eastern Michigan Athletic Director Scott Wetherbee. Remember, guys, rate, review, and subscribe on Spotify, Apple, wherever you listen to your podcasts, YouTube, and we'll get this thing rolling. All right. Rodd and I sat next to each other today at the Mack Brown press conference. I just needed someone to kind of talk to about this. I hate doing solo podcasts, so I texted Rodd. Rodd, your initial thoughts to kind of what was Mack's general kind of takeaways from his time with the media today, coming off a 19-17 win on the road at Minnesota and heading into Charlotte next Saturday in the home opener in Chapel Hill.
Yeah, obviously, Ross, starting off, man, just getting more info on Max Johnson and the whole situation there. Once we got through that, obviously, there's no easy, quick transition moving on from a season-ended injury. But obviously, Connor Harrell was the talk today, man. It's his time, he says. And the big thing from Mack today that stood out to me was him talking about how physical the team was, man. I think he said, this is the toughest team he's had so far in Chapel Hill?
Yeah.
That's quite a statement, man, after week 1.
Yeah, I think the big takeaway, if you want to write one sentence about what Mack said, is their identity is going to be run the ball, stop the run, and they need to improve on explosive plays and making plays and special teams. They did a lot of that against Minnesota, and I think they came away overall we had to run the ball there. We had to slow the game down. It was going to be a knockdown, drag-out fight. They did stop the run against Minnesota, so they were successful on many facets of the game plan. And then special teams with the play of Elijah Huzzy, the play of Noah Burnett. They kind of achieved that strategy. And it seems like the whole thing, talking to Chip Lindsay, the offensive coordinator, it's going to be Omarion Hampton, and it's going to be running him. And now they got to get Connor Harrell up to speed, kind of work him into the offense. And it's kind of we're moving on to Connor. The Max thing sucks. He's still in Minnesota, recovering from injury, but it's Connor's team now.
Yeah, there's no surprise there, right, with Omarion Hampton being the central guy. Ground and pound 90s football, man. It's just like Mack's first stint again. But that's what they have to do to win. I don't think that's a surprise to anybody. The Max Johnson injury sucks, but even if Max was healthy, I think this was still the path for UNC to be the best version of themselves with what they want to do this season.
You thought it was going to be
run the ball.
Connor?
Yeah, run the ball, man. Like you said, get some play action passes off of that. Try to keep the defense honest and hope your defense is going to keep playing like it did in the opener. And then if you have to win some of these low-scoring games, it's not what people, want to watch as far as tuning in. But when you win, who cares?
Exactly. And kind of walk. Oh, did I mute you there? You good?
Yeah, we're good.
Yeah, sorry. I might talk to Rodd there. So, yeah, I think the big thing was walking into there, talking to Jeremy Sharp, who's the SID for football and SID for Mack, fact they won. 1-0 now. A lot of teams are not 1-0. You have Florida State 0-1. You have Clemson 0-1. You have Virginia Tech 0-1. I mean, getting that win against a Power 5 team, Mack loves to talk about his success. Hey, and he has a right to brag. And he was like, look, the Big Ten went 17-1 in week 1. What was that one win?
What a
one
stat,
loss.
Man.
It was against UNC.
Yeah.
So they're proud to get that win with the weather, with the delay. And the big thing now, and I tweeted this out a couple days ago, is like, all right, Chip Lindsay needs to get with Connor Harrell. They got to figure out what the offense is going to be. They got to get some playmakers involved. Why was Nate McCollum not getting the ball? Why was Kobe Paysauer not getting the ball? I think Bryson Nesbitt needs to be more involved, but it's clearly going to be the run game. There's no secret there. Trying to think, going through my notes here, talking to Chip Lindsay. One thing I noticed about Chip Lindsay, dude, he never makes eye contact when he's talking to us. Have you noticed that?
Is he trying to scan the room, or just nobody in particular, or what? Just
I don't know, man.
That old theory where you don't look at somebody's eyes, you look above their head if you're nervous.
Yeah, or like he's trying to be dominant by not like locking eyes with any reporter.
Yeah.
Like I noticed that when I covered him his first year, and or maybe I interviewed him before I left for Ann Arbor. But yeah, like you ask him a question and his eyes are very scattered. He's never making direct eye contact with you. So who knows there? They love the offensive line. I mean, they were pretty confident coming out with no injuries. Kind of raving on the young guys who played some. Aiden Banfield, dude, I couldn't tell you a thing about Aiden Banfield. The left and right tackle.
I mean, him and Ty Green were the story, right? I mean, those two guys got rave reviews out of the Minnesota game. And when you have 4 new offensive linemen that only give up, 2 sacks against Minnesota on the road, Big Ten opponent, you got to feel pretty good coming out of that, man.
And I think it sets up nicely here to face Charlotte and then Central, to work on those explosive plays, to try some new things, to see what works, to see how you can get some offensive players open. So the schedule sets up nice now. I was talking to Jerry about this as well. It's like 1-0. Now you have a chance to go, 3-0 at home, move to 4-0, and you're 4-0 heading to Duke. I mean, Duke's a winnable game on the schedule. That's probably a W. I think they'll be favored there. So then you're 5-0 with Georgia Tech and Pitt at home. That's kind of how I'm compartmentalizing the schedule. So, I mean, it kind of sets up nicely here, and it shows you how important the Minnesota game was.
Look, I mean, 10 out of their 12 games, they should be favored, man, if you're looking at the schedule right now, outside of State at home in the finale and at Florida State in November 2nd, I believe. Any other game, they can win. I mean, that makes week 1 even bigger, right? Because you're playing Charlotte, James Madison, NC Central. I mean, no offense to those programs, but if you go 0-1, fans aren't exactly going to be psyched to see you beat up on those other schools if you give a poor start in Minnesota.
Big thing was playing to a standard. I thought Geoff Collins, moving on to the defensive coordinator, Geoff Collins, my first time to talk to him, playing to the standard. And I think everybody was very impressed with the defensive line. I mean, he raved about Javari Ritzie, Des Evans, Bo Atkinson, Travis Shaw, Joshua Harris as well. I mean, the praise for Des Evans, it didn't really pop on TV or in the stat line, but he said Des Evans probably had played better than anyone because he is causing a lot of those TFLs and sacks. Travis Shaw down 44 pounds since January, playing a big role, 22 snaps, which is probably more he's really ever played in meaningful snaps as a Tar Heel. It's good to see from him. I mean, he was making some plays, kind of in the right place at the right time on some huge plays for UNC. And, of course, Ritzie, we talked about him on the reaction show. All over the field. Jeff Collins had a Javari Ritzie NIL shirt that Adam Smith.
I saw y'all tweet that one out, man.
That was making the rounds on Twitter. Your any takeaways from kind of the defense and what Jeff Collins was saying?
Yeah, man, I feel like we talk about the defensive line every year, waiting for them to get over that hump, man. So, to see them do it in week 1, great job. But, I mean, we kind of saw it last year in week 1 with South Carolina. So, before you get too hype about the defensive line, you want to see them string together those performances against the Power 4 conferences now. Sorry. But you want to see that consistency from them that we've been asking for the last several years.
I think Geoff Collins said something about Minnesota offensive line being a top 10 group. I don't know how you can know that.
Yeah, experience.
Experience, but I don't know if you know that kind of sitting here right now. But hey, a Big Ten line, they're probably going to face some easier groups in the ACC, especially the next 3 weeks at home. I was impressed with Geoff Collins' the inseam on his shorts. I've never seen a football coach wear shorter shorts, and I love it. I'm a short shorts guy. Been that way my whole life. I mean, but it was kind of cool to see him wear 4-inch inseam, 3-inch inseams coming out. You never see that. And of
Showing
course,
that
Mack
thigh
Brown,
meat off, man. Summer still. Last day of summer, I guess, man.
yeah, and Mack Brown with the Jordans on, making sure to show us the Jordan, Deer Chapel Hill or whatever they were, the lows there as well.
Exclusives.
Exactly. So yeah, I mean that's about it. I just wanted to kind of recap the press conference. Rodd sat next to him. I didn't even tell you, Rodd. Introduce yourself in terms of who you write for and what you cover.
Yeah, I'm with the Fayetteville Observer, part of the USA Today network. So we've got a few papers across North Carolina that I technically write for, but I'm based out of Fayetteville. That's my main hub, so to speak. So in addition to the Tar Heels, I also head over to Raleigh to cover NC State and Durham to cover the Blue Devils. So all three triangle schools, man. Should be a fun year of football and basketball.
And follow Rodd on Twitter. It's just Rodd Baxley, RODDBAXLEY. Man, you got that. You got your full name. Very simple Twitter.
Not a lot of Rodds with double D's, man.
That's right.
Big double D's Rodds guy. Yeah, there you go.
And you don't tweet a lot, but Rodd's a great follow. Very knowledgeable. More of a basketball guy. So we're going to have him on. I love hanging with Rodd. Missed you, man. We'll have Rodd on more during basketball season as well. But he covers State, Duke, Carolina, not much Wake Forest. And before we get out of here, you'll be in the stadium against when NC State takes on Tennessee. I'll be there in attendance. Not sure if I'm going to make a press box appearance, but I am credentialed. Any early takeaways on NC State facing off against the mighty Volunteers?
Yeah, I mean, you never want to overreact to week one, but State had some moments of what are they doing out there until the fourth quarter. So if you want to see more consistency from those guys going against Tennessee, because you don't have a lot of these opportunities, man, in front of a national audience on ABC. I think Herbie's going to be there. Reese Davis is going to be there. So you don't want to produce a stinker against the Vols on national television. I think it'll be one in the trenches. You hear that from football coaches, that cliche. But, I mean, NC State's offensive line did not look good for three quarters against Western Carolina. So Tennessee's front, a lot bigger, a lot faster, a lot better. They better show up Saturday or it could be a long night in Charlotte for the Wolfpack.
This is another chance for the ACC to show up against the SEC team. Virginia Tech did not do that at Vandy. Vandy, obviously a bottom-of-the-barrel SEC team. You had UNC beat a Power 5 team. You had Clemson completely kind of embarrass themselves against Georgia, but I think Georgia would beat anybody in the ACC. But this is a shot. This is a shot for the ACC to kind of show something. But I think Tennessee is going to roll, and also think Tennessee is about to kind of get to the next echelon of college football. They're recruiting out of their minds now. They're really taking advantage of the NIL, and that's an unbelievable football atmosphere in Knoxville. Should be fun in Charlotte, man. Those are two big fan bases. A lot of red. A lot of orange, a lot of blue collar, a lot of people coming out of the woodworks from different parts of
a lot of hand in the dirt.
Yeah, a lot of hand in the dirt people, a lot of people coming out of the woodworks and out of the woods from both states, Tennessee and North Carolina. I can't imagine a fight between just different parts of that fan base. We'll hopefully see it.
Yeah, there will be a rest on Saturday.
Yeah, it's going to be a lot of bourbon, a lot of light beer flying outside Bank of America Stadium. All right, Rodd, guess who I'm having on tomorrow morning to talk ACC?
Who you have tomorrow morning, man?
Who do you think? Give a couple guesses.
Who you got? I got nothing, man. It's too early in the year to start honing in on, set guess.
Josh Graham is coming on to give me his hottest takes about the ACC.
Oh, my. That's a must-listen episode, man.
Yeah,
Instant Graham.
I was just seeing his tweets, like, defending the ACC. So I'm going to get him on to talk kind of
He's the new face of the ACC, man. That's headquarters now, Winston-Salem. Forget about Charlotte, man. It's Winston-Salem, the Triad, and the Drive.
The Paul Feinbaum of the ACC, Josh Graham. All right, thanks, Rodd. We're going to have Rodd on again. Definitely closer to basketball season. Talk Tar Heels, talk Blue Devils, NC State basketball as well. Rodd's a good buddy. Appreciate him hopping on here. Stay tuned for the Eastern Michigan interview with Eastern Michigan Athletic Director Scott Wetherbee. Really interesting if you're into kind of NCAA stuff, into Division I football. They are in a interesting conference, the Mack, up there in Michigan and Ohio, Illinois. It's an interesting level of football. They're fundraising at a crazy level. Maxx Crosby donated $1 million to Eastern Michigan to take out the track and kind of rebuild the stadium there. So a lot of cool stuff. And working for Eastern Michigan was an interesting experience to kind of see the other side of athletics after covering UNC. So I really appreciate Scott coming on. Hopefully you learned something about kind of the inner workings of an athletic program with Eastern Michigan athletic director Scott Wetherbee. All right, thanks, Rodd. Appreciate it, man.
Thanks, man.
All right, welcome into the Ross Martin podcast. I'm your host, Ross Martin, joined here by Eastern Michigan athletic director Scott Wetherbee. Scott, what's up, man?
Ross, thanks for having me on.
Yeah, this is my first interview of the show.
Oh, man, I didn't. Now I have pressure on me.
Yeah, I'm trying to knock out a couple interviews here in Michigan before I moving on Wednesday. We were recording on July 22nd, ahead of the football season here. I worked at Eastern for about, 6 months, August to like February, March. Got to know Scott decently. For an athletic director, you're very accessible, very open. I walked in your office a couple of times, talked to you, so I really appreciate that. It's a really cool aspect of kind of how you run things here at Eastern.
Yeah, I certainly try to be accessible to people, and at the end of the day, I try to treat people the way I'd want to be treated. And I was once in your shoes where you're trying to find your way and make your path, and so if I can help with that, that's why I enjoy it. It's part of the job. I mean, we're in the grind all the time, so if I get an opportunity to, whether it's mentorship or just having a conversation, and then this happens, right? Now all of a sudden you're doing podcasts and you're going to probably become famous, and I get to say I was the first one to get you started, so
that's
it's all good.
I mean, super cool to have you on. Athletic director of Eastern Michigan, a Mack program here in Ypsi. 10 miles down from Ann Arbor, pretty close to Detroit as well. I honestly, to be honest, I didn't really know much about Eastern when I moved here. I moved to, my girlfriend's working at Michigan. We're living in Ann Arbor, and I'm looking for sports jobs in sports, and I find out about Eastern. And I walked here, the facilities are unbelievable. And then going through the locker room and the football facilities, it really blew me away. It compares to any Power 5 conference in terms of how quality of the facilities, the quality of the field. I love the George Gervin Center here. Yep. And it really has credit to kind of how you built it and how Eastern's grown in the last 10 years. When you got this job, what was your first kind of thought of what your vision was for Eastern?
Yeah, I want to say my first thoughts coming in were more on the marketing side and branding side of things. So it was really what I was kind of known for, that I felt like I was really good about entertaining fans, being able to get what I call butts in seats, where I can get people to come to our games and feel like I always want a football game to be like a wedding. You always remember a wedding. If I give you a name, you'll go, I remember that wedding, right? And so I want them to come to a football game and remember that. And I can't control what happens on the field, but I certainly can control all the other aspects, from the music to the parking lot to the way things are handled in the stands to whatever else, the band and everything. And so I felt I was really good about mapping that out. And so that was one of the first things that I worked on when I got here. And then certainly the brand, when I got here, I just really wanted to focus on the Block E. I made a joke about today's Block E Friday. We had Maroon Fridays at Mississippi State. We had Paint It Purple Fridays at East Carolina. And I said, well, we're going to have Block E Fridays here. And so it's kind of stuck. I actually started 7 years ago, July 17th. So it's already been 7 years, and getting ready to go into season number 8 of all of our sports. And so I would say that was my main focus early on. I also obviously had budget trouble, and there were some issues budgetarily, and so we had to make some tough decisions really in the first 6-8 months on the job and handling that. And then the best thing I can do for this university is fundraise.
Yeah.
And then I certainly have morphed into the fact that my vision now is very specific to taking care of our student athletes. And so that's all of the enhancements that you talked about, or what you were a little surprised when you got here of the things that we have as an athletic department. And we've worked really hard the last 7 years to have the facilities that we have.
For sure.
And really excited about that.
We're going to get into a lot of topics. I want to start with your career. We'll get way more into some Eastern Michigan stuff, and kind of the football program and athletics in general, and some hiring and leadership talk, and some Maxx Crosby talk as well. But your career, did you grow up wanting to be an athletic director? How does that start? How do you kind of decide, and maybe in high school or college you want to work in athletics, and how does it evolve to I could be an athletic director, I could work at the admin side of athletics? When did that start?
Yeah, so I would kind of start backwards a little bit differently, because I didn't think I would knew that I wanted to be an athletic director probably till 11, 12 years ago.
Okay.
So it didn't really dawn on me that I could get to the top, be a sitting athletic director. I always thought maybe I would be, just a support role, and didn't really have that vision for it. I certainly didn't have it in high school or college. I went to college to play baseball. That I wanted that to be my focus. And then if baseball didn't work out, that I wanted to be a coach. And so, heck, I thought maybe I'd even be I didn't necessarily want to be a teacher, but I thought maybe I might have to teach if I wanted to coach.
Like a high school baseball coach.
Yeah, and then I was actually able to go to, I went to Ferris State, a Division II school, to play baseball. They cut the baseball program my freshman year, so I transferred to Ball State. And the best thing that happened to me was transferring to Ball State, because they had a sport administration program that had a focus on higher education. So it was a focus on college athletics, which I didn't even know existed at the time. And so that piece of it was really, really good for me. And then I worked on having, what am I going to do after my degree? I mean, I didn't. My daughter and I are talking about this. She's a sophomore right now, and here at Eastern, and we talk about I didn't know what I wanted to do when I was a sophomore in college. Yeah. I just wanted to try to play baseball and figure everything out as we go. And so no, I didn't really have a plan to be an athletic director. I always just thought I'd be a coach. And now there's obviously comparables to that, right? It's I feel like I'm a coach in some way, right? I have my coordinators that do stuff for me, and that we game plan, and how are we going to make a successful department. Now I have 500 student athletes instead of a small team as well.
So let's get into, I think you were a GA at Ball State. I have your whole resume written down here. I want to briefly go through some of the experiences.
Yeah, I think the biggest one was I started as an intern to finish my degree at Western Michigan University. And
did you graduate from Western?
No, I went to Ball State, but I did my internship at Western Michigan, because that was my hometown. And this funny story, the athletic director, she was actually the number 2 at the time, Kathy Beauregard, who ended up being a longtime athletic director at Western Michigan. Her husband was my guidance counselor and football coach.
In high school?
In high school.
Okay.
And so I called back to him and said, hey, can you see if your wife would help me get an internship, because I needed to finish my degree at Ball State. So I went back home. Yeah, so I went back home, stayed there, and spent the semester. And this is I'm gonna date myself now. This was 1997.
Okay.
So that was the first start in college athletics. Was basically, outside of being a student athlete, my first job was an internship in the ticket office at Western Michigan with Don Byer, who is still
name dropping.
Don is still in charge of the ticket office at Western Michigan.
So coming up in tickets, because you did ticket intern at Western Michigan, Ball State GA, which I'm sure covered a lot of different areas of marketing and ticketing.
Yep.
And then you were at Fresno State as a ticket manager, ticket operations at San Diego State, and then to East Carolina. That is cutting your teeth. Selling tickets at those kind of schools. Yeah. It's tough. It was tough at Eastern, tough anywhere to sell tickets to athletics, especially the non-revenue sports. What did you take away from that path, and when did the vision start?
I'm working in ticket office operations. Like, at what point you're like, all right, I can go here, I can go there. The strategy involved behind that, and the challenge of selling tickets at that level.
Yeah, so the ticket office part really helped mold me to working with all sorts of people, right? I mean, you're interacting with all walks of life. You're having some that have never been to your venue before. You have others that are donors that you have to get to know and have a relationship with, and you start to figure out where they want to sit on the road and have these different challenges. You're cold calling people. You're taking phone calls from upset people. What's helped me with it is I'm a yes person. And in the ticket office world, there are times where you just can't do stuff for people, and you do the best you can. And so I was in ticketing for obviously a number of years, and where I had the opportunity to transition was at East Carolina. I was there about two and a half years, and the director of marketing had an opportunity to go to the multimedia rights side. This is back in the day when it was just starting. And so IMG, what was ISP at the time, came in and took over the rights to our sponsorships at East Carolina. And they wanted to have somebody from the staff kind of go over and do that. And actually, it was Craig Curtis, who I just talked to a week ago, and this happened 20 years ago now. This is 04, 05, 06 timeframe. And when he got the job as like an assistant with ISP, that opened up the director of marketing position. And so I went to my boss. We had the same boss. And I said, look, all the things that we're doing in the ticket office, most of it is promotion driven to buy tickets and sell tickets and get people to go to the games. And I said, I think I can oversee both, and we would have a lot better communication. We'd be a lot better hybrid, and kind of really starting what we didn't really see it back then yet was an external team. I mean, we were starting to see it a little bit, and we didn't have social media yet, really. We didn't have video departments yet. And so we started slowly with marketing, which was focused on getting people to the games and entertaining and getting them to buy tickets. Then slowly, as I'm there, we started, and so he gave me the job, and then I slowly transitioned to adding video, adding social media. And so I really became like an external person in trying to touch all of our fan base, our alumni, donors, whoever it may be.
What years were you at Eastern?
So
East Carolina.
Yeah, East Carolina. I was there in 03, so 2003 to 2013. I spent 10 years. Yeah. But I slowly had moved up while I was there. I had a great boss. Nick Floyd was just awesome to me. The funny story about that, again, I don't want to get too long-winded too, but I was at San Diego State, had just gotten married, and there was a job opening for the ticket office, and they weren't sure if they would fly me out for an interview. I happened to be playing golf with my buddies at Myrtle Beach.
Okay.
And
a 2-hour drive?
And it's a couple-hour drive, and so I flew in and out of Raleigh to do that, rented a car, and I told them, hey, how about we just have lunch? And so basically I created my own interview. Yeah. Had a great lunch, and
so there was an opening, but they hadn't reached out to you?
So they had an opening, and we had been talking, but I said, hey, I'm going to be that way. I'll just come. Yeah. So it's on my dime to do the interview, gotcha. And he gives me the job off of that. And so luckily, because they didn't pay for anything, I said, hey, would you fly my wife and I out to look at houses a few weeks later? And so they agreed to do that because they didn't have to fly me in for the interview. So I took the initiative. Had I not done that and done that golf trip, I wouldn't have gotten that job.
With 2003, I mean, I was in college then, so I was about to be in college. The you said the internet, videos, social media. I mean, it was just getting started there, but Facebook was still very new. Twitter didn't start, Instagram didn't start way until 2009, 2010, 2011. So you said using the internet as a marketing and a way to sell tickets and market the program. Like, how did you see that grow while you're at East Carolina? It seems like you were kind of a part of leading that push there.
Well, without a doubt. I mean, it reminded me of Fresno State in 2001, I created the first ticketing website for them.
I can imagine what it looked like, you know?
And being able to sell tickets through it and people wrapping their head around trusting credit card processing and those things. And then East Carolina, obviously, is where when you're there 10 years, and then, like you said, it goes from MySpace to Facebook to other things that transitioned. And so I saw it go from, you're selling so much of it person to person, over the phone, with a credit card.
Its emails are still pretty.
Email. We were doing some emails, and we were figuring out how to do mail merges, right, with emails. So we had Outlook, and so then I would have spreadsheets and then dump, and so it would put your name and stuff. And again, you do that now, but back then you didn't have a platform, email platform really that you could use. You basically used your own. I used my own personal Outlook to send emails to all these people, and sell tickets, and you get them to buy. But a lot of times you end up making phone calls to them. So I wish I could probably go back and look. I mean, I keep all my stuff, but you could see where the trend goes from phone calls or in-person walk-ins to online, and then now it's, you're 90% online and stuff. It's totally changed.
It's crazy how much you can reach people now versus just 10 years ago.
Yeah.
Like Twitter, you can send a whole message out on Twitter or Instagram and reach someone across the country. Whereas 10 years ago, you still have email, but and text and calls, but now social media is just a different way to market.
I never thought DMs it's funny. I'm 50 now, right? So it's like direct messaging people. I mean, you can communicate really to anybody through that way.
It completely changes everybody's network.
Yeah,
and
totally.
every business. I mean, it's unbelievable. Like
Exactly
just
right.
20 years ago. ECU, obviously, this is a UNC North Carolina kind of focused, ACC focused podcast. But tons of friends who went to ECU, and I have a good buddy who covers ECU. Any interesting stories, funny stories about your 10 years there? I mean, that's a rabid fan base for football, for baseball too.
Yep.
It's a different part of the country than even like a Raleigh or a Chapel Hill. I mean, it's way out there in Eastern NC, which is this whole different world. What was it like? Anything that kind of stood out to you that you kind of look back at that's unique about working at ECU?
Oh, I loved ECU. ECU is still kind of home for us because both our kids were born there. And I hit it at the right time. When I came in, football had struggled. We went from the Steve Logan era, had just finished up. I arrived during the John Thompson 2 years that didn't go over too well, to the transferring over to Skip Holtz. And so we really were able to take off with Skip and then come into Ruffin McNeil on the football side of things. And then, so I got to be a part of some really cool football games. And on the football front, we announced the schedule where we were going to play, home and away with NC State, UNC, Virginia Tech. We played Virginia Tech in Charlotte at, I think it was Bank of America at the time. I'm not sure if it's still that or not. And then we played we had West Virginia home and home as well. And so we had a couple good runs there, especially the 08-09 when we won the conference championship back-to-back years. And we had beat Virginia Tech on a block punt. Bank of America came back and played like West Virginia. I want to say it was a top 10 team, and we just put it to them. It was like 17-7 if I remember right. And so some of those memories, I remember when we beat NC State in overtime with Russell Wilson threw the interception to end the game.
Were you there when they beat UNC 70-20?
No, that was the next year.
Was that 14?
That was the next year after I was gone, and then they ran 70 up on them.
Yeah, I remember exactly where it was. I watched that in Nashville, Tennessee. Yep. What was
also neat there was we did a lot of building projects, and I think that's kind of where I started to get the taste for wanting to expand and do stuff. We went from 43,000 to 50,000, but we also redid their soccer stadium, moved the track, similar to what I just did here at Eastern. They built an Olympic complex. They built a new softball stadium. We built a baseball stadium while we were there. I mean, I've been fortunate. I built a new baseball stadium. We got to be a part of that at East Carolina, and then I was a part of designing and building the Mississippi State baseball stadium as well. So
fan base at ECU? Briefly?
Phenomenal. Very, very to me, very SEC like, especially.
What do you mean by that?
What I mean by that is. That their tailgate, they want to tailgate even the night before, and the tailgate lots are all full. Again, I was fortunate enough to be, we had like a 2-year sellout streak of, 49, 50,000 plus run there in 08, 09, 10. And that's when we expanded. And just very rabid, cares a lot, traveled really well. When we go to West Virginia, Tech, we sold all of our allotment.
It's a good fan base. It's a good football and baseball fan base.
Great fan base, and love the people back in Eastern North Carolina, and yep.
By the coast there too.
Oh yeah,
Purple
I had a way to back roads, hour and 15 minutes to Emerald Isle.
Oh, love it, Crystal Coast.
Yes, very very nice, and then you can get to the Outer Banks as well. So
love it. All right, and then you went to Mississippi State. You were only there for like 4 years. 4 years. You were intern AD there.
I intermediate.
Your first position there?
So I was hired by Scott Strickland, and I joked with him on the interview that if I do a good job, then one day I'll be able to sit in his seat, meaning an AD seat. I didn't realize that he would leave to go to Florida, and I literally would be sitting in his seat.
Was that pretty soon after you were hired?
No, actually it was 3 years. We were there about 2.5 years. We had a good run, obviously Dak Prescott era, and we had expanded the football stadium. We were building the baseball stadium. We had done a softball, tennis project. We had done a golf project. So we had done a lot of really good things. And then Scott had the opportunity to go to Florida. And so I was interim for about a month. And it was strange because John Cohen was our baseball coach. John kind of reported to me. I was sport administrator for baseball.
Okay.
A couple months later, he's the athletic director, and I'm reporting to him.
Oh, so they hired the baseball coach.
So they did, and we were building the baseball stadium at the time, and it made a lot of sense with his donor connections and the fundraising side of it. And John is one of the smartest human beings I've ever met. Very bright, and did a great job. He took very good care of me. Promised me that he'd make me a deputy. He did. Said, hey, I'll take care of you if there's ever an opportunity for you to get a job. I'll be supportive. He helped me get this Eastern Michigan job, and now he's at Auburn and doing a great job at Auburn too. So I owe a lot to obviously Scott Strickland and John Cohen.
Were you number two there? Is deputy just mean number two, or are there multiple deputies?
We had multiple deputies. I think when I first got there, I wouldn't say I was the number two. We had a CFO that was more that had been there a while.
Like on the back end of stuff.
Yeah, but then once he retired, I really became more of the number two. Now, I helped Scott hired Jared Banco to be our CFO when our other CFO left, and Jared is now the athletic director at Georgia Southern, and we actually scheduled the game together here. Nice. In the next few years, but so Jared and I were kind of the 1-2 punch to help Scott, but then obviously I was named interim when Scott left as well.
And then Eastern Michigan, what was that like? The opening comes up. What's the hiring process like? Are they interviewing 5 people? Interviewing 10 people? Do you go seek it out? Yeah. I'm very interested in how they find someone of all. There's tons of deputy ADs all across the country at Power 5 schools that are eager to get to the AD level of employment.
Yeah, I really believe, fit is really important for people and kind of what they're looking for. And, there were multiple jobs open at the time, and, you kind of sit down with your spouse and you talk about what are locations that you think you would be willing to live. And at the time, we didn't really want to go north. We were in North Carolina and Mississippi. We have family. Both our parents are in Florida. And so the focus was more staying south. But if you really want to truly have an opportunity, you can't really limit yourself.
Yeah.
And so the Central Michigan job came open, the Eastern Michigan job came open. I'll tell you that Eastern Michigan took the approach of we're going to hire a search firm and keep it quiet and not get names out there. And Central Michigan was more public, and they were going to do a committee, and you got to come on campus and interview with a bunch of people. And I'm a people person. I don't mind doing that. I just didn't want my name to be out like I'm trying to find jobs unless I felt like it was a great opportunity for me. And you don't want to all of a sudden be that guy or gal that's names in every opening, and they're realizing, well, he ain't getting any of them. And so I was very strategic. I've always been that way, to work directly with a search firm, the different search firms that are out there, and having relationships with them, because most of them use those. And so Daniel Parker, the Parker Search group, did this job. He had also placed our president just the year prior
at Eastern.
Gotcha. And so President Smith was hired through Parker Search, and so he hired Parker to run the search when Heather got the job at Pittsburgh. And so then when it came open, I had to really think about, is this an opportunity that I want? And when Heather actually applied for the job 3 years prior, I was not interested. I didn't think I'd be a good fit up here. And then I really liked the hires that she made, and she had this championship building plan idea. And I felt like Eastern Michigan needed somebody that could really help market the program, help get fans in the stands, create a good entertainment value. And the one knock on me was fundraising. I had never been a fundraiser. I had obviously worked with donors. I had worked with people through the ticketing part of it, through their suites and dealing. But I always felt like I had good relationships, especially because many of them needed me for their parking passes and stuff at East Carolina, and you start to kind of go through that. So
different though when you start asking for money.
It is, and stuff. But again, at the end of the day, I was saying it's relationships and friendships, and I felt like, given the opportunity, if you have a good vision, that I could fundraise. And so when the Eastern job, came open, my dad still lived in Kalamazoo. My sisters still lived in Kalamazoo. I had not been back home, and I had not been back in the state of Michigan for probably 14, 15 years. My family had never been to the state of Michigan. But when you're here, you're talking about bringing your family home, get close to your dad. You want to get have the opportunity to raise your kids like you were raised. And so I hit on all those parts. So that's
in the interview.
Because you want to have that. They want to feel like, he understands us. He understands the Michigan way. He knows what Michiganders are, as opposed to somebody from the outside. Obviously, Kathy Beauregard was the AD at Western Michigan who gave me my start, who I still stayed in touch with. Bob Moosebrugger was the AD at Bowling Green. He's one of my best friends. So I had people in the Mack. I went and played ball at Ball State. And so I have these, so I'm using the Mack connection. I'm using my family connection. I'm using the marketing. And so the interview process was a Zoom with, I think they did 8 to 10 Zooms. Back then it was not Zoom though. It was.
Was it?
I'm going to draw a blank.
Is that company that was advanced?
Yeah, I'll think of it in a minute. But so we did that. Got on and did that. And for me, I was able to actually do it in a studio that I built for the SEC network. Nice. So I sat in and did my interview and thought it went well. And then they brought me to campus. I believe they brought 4 people to campus.
Okay.
And I kind of know who they are now, after the fact, and it's kind of fun for us to, because I interact with some of them and stuff. But and then when I got here, they had a committee, but then they also had you meet with a few of the regents. They had you meet with some of the executive council who were not on the committee, but they still had a say. Give you a tour. Meet with the coaches, and then had to wait to see if I get the offer or not.
And you took it, got the offer and took it.
Yeah, I was excited about it. Thought Heather had done such a good job that I could keep it rolling. I had talked to her a lot, beforehand.
There's a lot of challenges here.
Yeah, I wanted to know what was I getting into.
Yeah.
And
was there hesitation to stay at Mississippi State?
I mean, I love the SEC. I just didn't, obviously I wasn't going to move up there because they just got a new AD.
Yeah.
And John and I worked well together, but you're thinking I got to go sit in the chair, have an opportunity to leave to come back, and so you do that, right?
Yeah.
And so it's been great, and I'm glad I came. My dad passed away 4 years ago, so I got to spend some time with him. My sister passed away 3 years ago. Got to spend some time with her, so it actually was a true blessing for us to be able to have my kids get to know my sister, their aunt, and to know their granddad a little bit more because we weren't around them that much when we were in the South. So that part of it certainly worked out for us.
Let's get into, awesome tale of your rise up there. It's just interesting how different people move through the business. All right, Eastern Michigan. There's a lot of challenges here. You've done tons in fundraising. We've got a lot of topics here. We have about 20 minutes left, so I want to touch on a bunch of different things.
Yeah.
I think fundraising is kind of what I noticed when I came here, because even I've been here for 6 months, and you had 3 or 4 pretty massive announcements in the last 12 months or so. I guess, what is your vision with projects, and then how do you get the money to fundraise? And we'll talk about Max separately, but
Sure.
the projects for the track and field facility, I think baseball, to redo of the field obviously is a Maxx Crosby thing, but what is your vision? What's the goal? And then how do you gain support for that? And then how do you operate to get money from here, from there, from game above? I know it's a very broad question, but
Sure.
Kind of a brief look at how facilities happen and the fundraising to support the facilities.
Yeah, I think one, you have to have a vision for what you want to accomplish, as a department and as even as a university, and talking with the president on hey, what are things that we need to make our team successful that provides a great student athlete experience? What are we up against too, right? Who are we competing against? What do they have? And one, just to kind of stay up with everybody else. And I felt like when I got here, we were certainly behind in a number of areas, and so you start to look at that. And obviously the first thing we did was build the Student Athlete Performance Center, which now we're renaming the Incarnati Athletic Center, which was part of one of those gifts that we'll talk about.
And that's essentially the football, mostly football, but also a lot of Olympic sports handle that.
That's correct.
Right?
I mean, it touches all of our student athletes because of the weight room, the sports medicine, and the equipment is in one wing that basically any of our student athletes can interact in, nutrition as well. And then, but 75% of the building, 80% of the building is football, and their locker room and meeting space and lounge and the coaches and recruiting areas and stuff in a big, obviously, team room theater where we have all staff meetings and those things. But there's a domino to that. I mean, having that happen, and then it freed up all the old football offices to then now, instead of having your baseball coaches and your tennis coaches and golf coaches in the middle of campus, you bring them over here, and now we can all interact together. And then you build a $8 million golf facility, right? That was set up in 2019, but we didn't actually complete it until January of 24 because of COVID and getting pushed back. So we had not built any buildings, had any major building construction since 1999 when we built the George Garvin Center, which we're sitting in now. So, and then we did do the dome, which is not a permanent structure, but obviously a dome structure in 09. And then in 19, we were able to do the Incarnati Athletic Center. And then in 24, we were able to finish up the golf building. We've actually since redid the dome. So again, I'm in my mind, I'm like, what are things we need to enhance? We had to get locker rooms for a number of our sports. We obviously added lacrosse. We had to redo the turf there. So again, in your mind, you're thinking, okay, what are our next projects? Like, we can talk about what's next after the projects that we've just finished. But then you go sit down with a donor and you tell them, like, these are the 3 or 4 things that we are trying to work on and trying to accomplish. And here's why. We're competing against Toledo. We're competing against Western. We're competing against NIU, Buffalo, whatever, our MAC schools, but we're trying to also be the best in the region. And so you're trying to have those conversations of like, this is what others have. This is what we have. This is where I'd like to take us, and I'd like you to help us with that. But it's not just like, hey, I'm going to go sit down and say, hey, Ross, will you come support this? It's
asking for money.
You and I develop a relationship over time of and having a connection that they can see the type of person that I am and what I'm trying to do for their institution. And one of the greatest compliments I've had from a couple of our donors is the fact that I treat Eastern Michigan like I went to school here. Mm-hmm. And they feel that and appreciate that. And I don't try to just like, I'm not trying to take their money and go get another job. I'm trying to take what they're giving to do stuff that's right for our institution, to help better Eastern Michigan as a whole. And I think when people genuinely can see that you care like that, it makes life a lot easier. And then you talked about this year. I mean, this year was great. I mean, it was supposed to happen a year ago.
Yeah, so we pushed everything back.
Yeah, but even then, I needed Maxx Crosby, and we'll obviously get into Max. But Max, I told him, I said, Max, if you help us out, there are others that'll help. I just need somebody to kind of break the dam.
Who better?
And if you do it, I think I got a couple other people that will do it. And the reason is you had a vision for. You want to get that track removed. It's something that Coach Creighton, since the day I walked in, said people are negatively recruiting against us because we have a high school football field. And like, why do you want to go play at that high school football field with a track around it? And that's no knock on our track program, because our track program is phenomenal, but that's a knock on our football program, right? And so, well, how can I appease our track program and help our football program? Well, the best way to do is let's remove that track and go build a state-of-the-art track for them to be able to train on and have the best there. So that's what we set out to do. And so when I sit down with Max, it's like, your gift will help me get a couple of others, including former track student athletes that want to help because they know they want to move the track too.
So you're building an outdoor track facility? That's correct, right?
Yes.
And the donors are former track and field athletes.
Yes.
Right?
So two of our gifts were from two former distance runners here that have a great tie to our track and field program. And the cool story about that was Max. So I got Max to commit, and we finally got it finalized the Sunday before the Monday night football game. Well, that same weekend, we asked our two track, Dan McClure and Keith Moore, from California. We said, hey, why don't you fly in? We have the cross-country championship down in Bowling Green. We play Western Michigan in football. And, oh, by the way, we got tickets and field passes to go see Max and see the Lions. And they're huge Lions fans, but they're huge Maxx Crosby fans, too. And so, and then we coordinated with another one of our donors, Jack Brusewitz, helped out with having dinner at the Detroit Athletic Club prior. So we had this whole plan. So they're like, well, heck, we're coming now.
And that's when you kind of finalized there.
Yeah. So they came in. And so on that Saturday after the Western Michigan game, I drove them around campus, showed them the new indoor that we had just redid the track indoor. So they were really excited that we had redone the track in there. But I showed them the location of where I wanted to put a new track and showed them images of what it would look like. And then I said, oh, by the way, Max is in for $1 million and we're doing it on Sunday. And you're going to see him on Monday, and I'd like you to match him. And they said, each of us or to combine? I said, no, I'd like each of you to do it. And so that's where we got to. So we're driving down to Detroit, and the cool thing, we're down on the field. We're down on the field at Ford Field, and we're getting ready to go back up. I had waved to Max and stuff on the field. We got some pictures. And then we're getting ready to go up. They took the sideline thing down. He comes from behind me and damn near tackles me on the field. And so I'm like, hey, these are the two donors I was telling you that I'm trying to get to match. So they got to meet Maxx Crosby on the field right before the Monday night football game. They were over the moon. I mean, it was really neat. And so we finalized with them. And then obviously Phil Incarnati, when I went to Phil, who has given in the past, I went to Phil and said, hey, Max is in for $1 million, but I really wanted to put Phil's name on the building, and it's a $20 million building, so typically you want 25% or 20% of the building costs to be able to get a name on it. And so he had given $1.5 million prior, and so I had asked him to give $2.5 million, so then I could recognize putting his name on the building, and he agreed to do that. And so that's how all of a sudden you line up 4 million plus gifts in basically about 6 weeks.
Yeah, but you're long playing them all. I mean, you said even before we started, you said you started the Maxx thing when you got drafted. 'Cause people don't know. I mean, I think the common person doesn't know. Maxx Crosby went to Eastern Michigan.
That's right.
Because he was the only offer he has was to Eastern. He was a skinny kid out of Texas, but he was from here, I think.
Yep.
And Chris Creighton, the head football coach at Eastern, gave him a scholarship, and he played here, and he got drafted in the first round and has become a stud for the Oakland Raiders, All-Pro, All-Star, one of the top 5 defenders in the NFL. Yep. And kind of an incredible story, too, with kind of his addiction stuff.
Yep.
And then how he's helped Eastern. He has a great podcast, too. So to have Maxx Crosby as Eastern alum is just such it's a blessing. I mean, it's incredible that you kind of struck gold with him, and he's been able to come back and help and not kind of forget where he came from. It's kind of it's a pretty cool story. Like, I don't think people know he went here. He has an Eastern, he has blocky on his arm.
Yeah, he does. Yeah,
people know his tattoos. Obviously.
Yeah, no, absolutely. He loves this place, and his wife. He met his wife here. Rachel played soccer here as well. And I'll correct you. So Maxx was a 4th round selection.
Oh, really? Wow.
And he actually left after his junior year.
Okay.
And so we're actually still working on getting him to graduate. So
was he 3 years here, or was he redshirt?
He was 4 years here.
Okay.
Yep.
So redshirt in 3 years.
He redshirt in 3 years. And then when he left and got drafted, I remember talking to him beforehand and after about like, hey, when there's like, we want you to be the face of our football program when the time comes. Like, I believe in you, that your big things are coming. And he always said, Scott, I want to give back. I want to help. I'll always be there. I appreciate everything that Eastern's done for me. It's made me who I am. We supported him through tough times. I mean, he did have an addiction and have issues, and we were there for him to try to help him with that. And I know he appreciates that, and that's part of why he wants to pay it forward. But then just through the years, you would meet with them, and you could see the rise, right? You could see the stardom that he was going to be something special. And then before he signed his huge contract, we talked about like setting up a foundation. We talked about understanding write-offs and why you would want to give and how it benefits Eastern Michigan, but it also benefits him. Mm-hmm. And obviously then he started to build out his team and his agent and his financial advisor and those that can help surround himself with good people. And so I've gotten to know them as well. And so it's been a process where you're like, look, I may not reap any of this at the end, and Maxx is not done giving. I don't believe him and Rachel that this is their last gift. This is just the start of something, because he can see the value, and we had a special event for him, and he had all of his family and Rachel's family. They had like 40 people here, and it was really neat to see, and to have Ella, their daughter, running around on Crosby Field. It just gives you goosebumps.
Yeah, so Maxx Crosby Field, they named the field here at Ranierson Stadium, the factory. They took out the track and they Eastern redid the whole field it's been gray, and they just redid it. New gray turf.
Yeah,
we're looking at it right now.
Yeah,
that's why we're looking at it.
That's right. I call it Raider gray now.
I love it
because Maxx wanted to help make this happen. And the gray turf story is Coach Creighton said he'll play anyone, anywhere, anytime. Even on a parking lot, even with broken glass. And so that's the gray is emulation of a parking lot with broken glass. And we had our most successful 10-year run. Going to 6 bowl games in those 10 years, and felt it was important to maintain that. And Maxx, it was important to Maxx as well as part of the gift that we would keep it gray.
Yeah.
And what's neat is now there's not a red track around it; it's a bunch of green. And so we went from 70% of the field being gray to now, when you look out here, as you and I look at it, it's probably only 30 or 35% gray, and the rest of it's green because of all the turf that we've put all the way around. It goes all the way to the walls and to the building.
Looks great. Google Eastern Michigan Field, and you'll see the gray field. It's very cool. I'm sure it's been featured in the new college football. I'm not a video game guy.
I'm not either, but we worked really hard to make sure the Crosby Field and the track were removed for the game, and EA has been great to work with.
Yeah.
So if you're playing it now, you'll see that we do not have a track around it anymore, so we're excited about that.
All right, we have 8 minutes left. I'm trying to get you out here by 11. I want to touch on 2 things. One is quickly I was here for it. the women's basketball situation here. So Fred Castro was the head coach when I arrived, and he was here for 8 seasons, and he started off 1-7 in 2023-24. I guess let him go. Midway through, he started 1-7, and then Keisha Blanton, who was like right next to us, so I got to know Keisha pretty well, took over as interim head coach, and then you hired, I don't pronounce her name.
Sahar Nasebe.
Are you okay?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. No, I get watery eyes. I get watery eyes. Get it from my mom.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Can you just talk about the process of entering the season? Knowing that Castro had to do something pretty well, and then starting 1-7, making the decision to fire him, and then obviously having an intern head coach, and then the hiring process. Kind of what goes in the athletic director's mind of the process, because it applies to any job with any person, but specifically in athletics with any sport here.
Yeah, and I am one that is not usually the type of person that makes a decision in the middle of the year. I'm a believer of letting a season play out, and but when I was watching our women's basketball team, I love Coach Castro. President Smith and I talk about it. He was one of my favorite human beings, and enjoyed being around and working with him. But when I was watching our games, I felt like our team was giving up, and it just it was missing a spark. And that, and I told the team this when I decided to make the change. He was in the last year of his contract. We also knew that, like, if we weren't going to have a really successful year, we had high expectations. I think we were picked 4th or 5th in the league for the year. That's where we expected to be, is in the top 4. And when we start off 1-7, and we're not even close in some of these games, I'm like, man, we've lost the team. There's no energy there. And if I don't make a change now, it's going to just continually get worse as the season goes on. And then basically I was giving up on the team. And so I went in and told the young ladies, look, we've got 20-some games to play yet, and I'm not willing to give up on this year's season. I felt like we were too talented. We had too much talent to be a 1-7 team, especially against who we were playing against. And so when I made the change, they won the next 3 games right after.
The Keisha effect.
Yeah, and Keisha is just a breath of fresh air, cares about the kids. The energy was different. But there's still challenges, right? I mean, you're not going to fix everything. And we put Keisha in a really tough spot. Her and her staff of that did everything they could to make it fun again. I was telling our student athletes on the team, I'm like, look, go on and enjoy. Like, you guys don't look like you even want to play basketball. Yeah. Like, I want you to go have fun. And I joked about, shoot a 3 and shoot an arrow, like, have some fun with it. And so that was kind of their thing. I mean, did you see me shoot my arrow for you and stuff? Yeah. And just trying to have that interaction and then obviously working closely with Keisha throughout the year. I think the world of her, Katie and the group. They were just a great group, and we put them in a tough spot. But it felt like the change was needed.
And then the hiring process, briefly, kind of when you're hiring someone, what's that? You looking at other assistants, the MAC level? You're looking at head coaches, maybe a little lower level. You're looking at other Division I. How does that kind of process work?
Yeah, early on, obviously when we made the change, then Aaron, Keto, and myself would basically create a list of who we think. Yeah, and so you're basically have different pods. You have is there any Division I sitting head coaches that we might have an opportunity to talk to that we would want to talk to? Then do you have any Division II sitting head coaches that you may want to talk to, or NAIA, whatever that may be? And then, okay, are there assistant or associate head coaches at the Division I level that maybe need an opportunity to be a head coach? Now, I have found at Eastern, I've learned through this process now in the hiring that I don't feel too comfortable hiring assistant coaches to cut their teeth at Eastern. We just don't have as many resources. Like, I feel like you've got to have a really good plan. Now, I say that not to say that I wouldn't hire an assistant coach, but I was really looking for a sitting head coach. either at the Division II or Division I level. And obviously Sahar was a Division I head coach in the MAAC and had taken a team that had only won 5 games the previous 2 years to get to 17 wins last year and finish 4th or 5th in the league, which they hadn't done in 10, 12 years. And she did that in 3 short years. So I knew that she could build and turn around a program and take that same blueprint and bring it here for us. And so when it made a lot of sense. And then when you talk to her, she's awesome. Just full of energy and leadership, and just really been really pleased with her hire.
Okay, this is I'm going to try to cram NCAA and NIL into 3 minutes here.
Okay.
All right. So obviously the big story here. There's a couple different avenues here. Power 5 continues to kind of distance itself from Group of 5 in terms of fundraising and the money they can give and all the TV deals. The SEC, the Big Ten, are even distancing themselves from the ACC and the Big 12. And we at UNC, I mean, we're worried about how far away schools like Tennessee, Alabama are getting from UNC and NC State and Duke. Group of 5, though, I mean, same deal. I mean, those schools are getting farther and farther away from the Group of 5. What is your thought on that? And, like, should it just split? What's your vision of what the NCAA looks like in 5 years and 10 years? I mean, I think a separate championship for the Group of 5 makes so much more sense. It's not like, the Sun Belt, the MAC, those schools are not competing at the level. It's not even close to the level of like an Alabama or an LSU. And so I'm wondering your vision of what you think should happen with the separation of just the resources that these different kind of colleges have in athletics.
That's a big.
I know, 2 minutes.
That's a big one on the cover. So I would say one, there's 2 different avenues to this, and I think we're spending so much time bundling football with everything else. Yeah. And that's where I think our mistake is. I don't disagree that they're really making a big divide from the Group of 5 to the P4, and especially on the financial side of things. But we're a part of the FBS Division I, and we want to maintain that in some way, shape, or form. I mean, I think it's important for our student athletes. It's important for our coaches when we're recruiting that we talk about that we're an FBS Division I institution. And so I think that benefits us when we're up against the Horizon League, when we're up against Division II opponent schools, when we're in the recruiting process.
Yeah, for sure.
And so I want to make sure that we are still tethered to that in some way, shape, or form, especially in all of our non-football sports. I don't want the NCAA basketball tournament to go away. I love the Cinderella stories. I want Eastern Michigan to have a breakthrough and go to the NCAA tournament and have an upset and have this, that's what you kind of strive for. Now, in football, it's a little different, right? Now you've got 65, 67, 68, whatever our Group of 5 number is, playing for one slot in the CFP. And so is there an opportunity to maybe have a Group of 5 type of playoff? I don't think I'm opposed to hearing what that would be. I think we worry more about the financial side of that. What does that mean from a financial aspect? What does that do to the bowl system? Could you do that within the bowl system? And so that's just we'd have to figure out how to lay that out. And I want to be a part of that process to figure out how do we navigate this course with such a big divide, and then where is the ACC and the Big 12 going to set with the SEC and the Big 10 really seeming to jump up even more? And is there more separation there? So again, my ears to the ground. I'm trying to figure out what we're doing. And at the end of the day, I've got to put my, maybe my personal goals and aspirations. If I want to be a P4 athletic director, at the end of the day, I got to do what's right for Eastern Michigan and the Mid-American Conference, and you try to slot yourself into what's best for them, not necessarily what's best for me. And so those are conversations that obviously are at the presidential level even. Yeah. And so I've got to help my president understand the ramifications of whatever decisions that ultimately come down. And the struggle we have is that we feel like, we, saying the Group of 5, feel like we don't really have a voice in some things, and we're kind of getting whatever the crumbs are. And so we got to figure out how to help navigate what does the NCAA look like, what does Division I look like, and what does Division I football, FBS football look like versus what does Division I, all the other stuff look like too, and managing that.
I say football should break apart even at the P4 level, like have a completely different. It's gonna end up being like two different leagues, like the Big Ten, the SEC, Fox, and ESPN, and the ACC and Big 12 are gonna have to like be absorbed into that. I think in 10, 15 years it's gonna look like that, and then some schools might have to drop down, like a Boston College, like a Duke or a Wake Forest. Like, do they want to try to compete at the SEC level, the Big Ten level, or do they want to, go down and you're going against schools that are more of their fundraising level? And then I think having a group of 5 championship makes tons of sense. You compete for that. You have more of a chance to make that. It's a cool little playoff, just like the P4, 12 teams or whatever. And like you have, like the MAC would have a representative in that every year. That's what you're fighting for. Sun Belt, all the different leagues. I think that's the way it should be, because it's just, I think the MAC is cool though, because the MAC's very regional. The MAC's got to stay with it. It's very regional. It's built in rivalries in all these states. There's like 5 teams in Ohio, 6 in Ohio, 3 in Michigan. It's a very regional conference, and that's great. So you want to keep that kind of regional aspect of these divisions and these leagues, and then have a championship at the end. I think it'd be very cool, because it's just like the gap is getting bigger between these big time schools.
Yeah, and I have mixed emotions on it. I mean, I can see both sides. I'm one of those that I don't usually go out and champion one way or the other, because I try to be respectful of everybody's kind of opinion on it, and then I try to figure out where's best for Eastern Michigan at that, wherever that we kind of settle out at. So, well, we'll see. I'm glad you name dropped the schools and not me, because I try to avoid all that.
With the House ruling, NIL stuff, how does a school like Eastern handle that? Of course, I think some schools now you have to, I'm not even sure, we're talking to Dan Murphy tomorrow about it, they have to pay players now at certain levels. What is your take on that? How Eastern Michigan's going to handle that?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing for the House settlement for Eastern is obviously we're going to have to pay into that, and so that's going to be a cost to us every year for the next 10 years. So that'll be a big piece of it. I don't see personally that we'll be in any kind of like revenue sharing element now. I mean, we already use a lot of general fund dollars from the university. We're not a profit center to be able to spread money out of profits. So we'll have to figure that. Out as we go here, and I'm not sure what the Mid-American Conference will do on that as well. And then just on the NIL front, we were slow to the game a little bit, and I'm kind of glad we were, because now we've got an influencer and things through Teamworks that people can interact with our student athletes and do NIL deals directly with them. We're starting to get it to where you can negotiate with our student athletes and a third party to help them with their NIL, which you couldn't do before. And eventually we may even bring in some NIL in-house and run it through the foundation and be able to take care of some student athletes for promoting our football games or basketball games or softball or soccer games or whatever. And so we're certainly doing it, and I just want to be able to do that on a bigger scale. And we are starting the football collective. I actually met with an individual this week to talk a little bit more about getting the football collective set up this fall, so we're ready to go towards the end of the season.
Yeah, awesome. Scott, I appreciate taking an hour out of your day to talk, be the first guest on what I think is going to be called the Ross Martin Podcast. Might be named something else, but I really appreciate my time here. You were a great person to, I guess, essentially work for, and appreciate being so open and accessible as an athletic director.
No, thanks, and good luck. Good luck with this podcast.
Yeah, thank you.
Yep.